Serious, what revenge of yours hit the victim way worse than you thought it would, to the point you said maybe I shouldn't have done that? Coworker and I had a friendly prank war spanning 2 years. Close to the end of our war he iced my car. Icing involves taking the hose to the parking lot every half hour and spraying a light mist over your victim's car when it's below 0 out. I finished my 12-hour shift to find a car encased in 2 inches of ice. My revenge was, I thought, both more inconvenient for him and less freezing my balls off for me. I decided to take a bedsheet, drape it over his car, and only took 4 or 5 trips out with the hose the next night. So the next morning he finds his car with a 1/4 inch of ice freezing a sheet to his car. When he started peeling off the sheet he pulled his windshield wipers, arms and all off of his ratty Jeep. I got a very pissed off phone call. I felt bad. The unwritten rule was embarrassing or inconvenient. No damage. I paid for repairs, and he got his revenge. He planted a dozen pieces of smoked herring throughout my car. Took me 6 months to find the last piece, hidden under the carpet under the back window of my car. I can still smell it. I don't even own the car anymore. Back in middle school, a friend of mine threw a small wadded piece of paper at me. I retaliated by throwing the only thing I could find, which was mud clothes to my shoes. Smacked him right in the face with it. Worst part is, it turned out to be dog crap that was at the bottom of my shoe. I still vividly remember his angry "WTF man, I throw paper at you, and you throw dog crap?" I guess revenge implies thinking out the act or some time between acts. But at the age of 14 I was rolling up the hose in my backyard with a friend. Since my mother told me to, the 2 girls next door were playing in their backyard and come over to talk. One 12 or so, the other 7. The 12-year-old happened to be standing on the hose and I asked her to move. She did not. I pulled the hose hard enough to make her fall over. At this point the 7-year-old screamed bloody murder and ran right at me and bit my right on the stomach. She was not letting go and I could see blood starting to stain my shirt. I grabbed her head and tried to pull her away, but nothing. So I just full on punched her right in her eye. I am not proud of this, but it had to be done. What was worse is that the house was owned by a local church where I happened to go to Boy Scouts. Everyone quickly knew I had punched a 7-year-old and given her a black eye, but no one cared why. When I was in 9th grade, a kid ruthlessly bullied me for a few months. I had gotten sick of it and devised a plan for revenge. Every Wednesday we would get to sit outside for quiet reading time and this kid would always go back inside for a piss. I had left and waited in the bathroom for him, peeking under the stall for his shoes to appear. He came in the bathroom, took his piss, then played on his Gamma Boy for the rest of reading time. The bell rang, and he walked out to the crowded stairwell still looking down at his Gamma Boy. I bumped into him. He fell face first down the stairs. Knocked out 4 front teeth. Everyone on the stairs assumed he fell because he was playing his Gamma Boy. I'm still mad at myself for this. When I was a preteen, my friend and I went to one of those day camps that picked us up in yellow school buses. One of the other kids on our bus was a younger boy I refer to as Ellie. Ellie was a flipping terror. He would scream and spit and hump things, make a mess, and be as annoying and insufferable as possible. Riding the bus with him was a nightmare for everyone involved most of the time. So I came up with this idea. I found his family in the phone book and called up pretending to be a camp counselor. I told his mom that he was misbehaving on the bus and that he would either be disciplined or kicked out of the camp if he didn't stop. She bought it, said she would talk to him about it. I felt so flipping smart. Until the next day, when a quiet, sullen Ellie showed up with a black eye. Yikes. When my friends and I were young, middle school or elementary age, there was this pair of sisters in our class. They were the epitome of a teacher's pet, helped because their mother was the assistant teacher, and whenever the teachers would leave they would snitch on everyone. Sometimes if they didn't like you, they would make crap up and you would get in trouble still. My friends and I were quite annoying, so we obviously got blamed for crap that we didn't do. No matter what we did, we were never believed in our innocence. So we did the logical thing of talking to every other student in the class, and they shared our opinion of how much we all didn't like these girls. Everybody was fed up with their crap. So we wrote a paper stating the crappy things these girls were doing and how everyone didn't like them and so on. We then got about 90% of our classmates to sign this paper. Then we gave it to the principal. I'm not 100% sure what happened next, but I do remember the principal coming into our class after recess, and she began to ask if this paper was true and so forth, and everyone who signed it agreed. A few days later these girls were kicked out of school, or maybe they left due to humiliation / parents decided to pull them from the school. Their mother was still the assistant teacher, and she was crying about the whole thing, and she was saying things about how we are horrible and how could we lie about her angels. I felt a bit bad, but I was quite happy that those girls were no longer there because they were mean and massive liars. I was 11, my older brother was 16. We would fight and argue, but one time I was running up the stairs away from him and he whipped the back of my legs with a long rubber chew toy. It left a pretty big figure-8 shaped welt on my legs. I knew he was faster and stronger than me, and I knew if I tried to attack him he'd stop me. So I grabbed a flathead screwdriver and held it over the stove until it was red hot. I ran up to him and very openly went to stab him, knowing he'd stop me. He grabbed my wrist to stop my thrust as anticipated, and I pushed the red hot head of it into his forearm as hard as I could. Man, I was a crazy butthole as a kid. Sorry, Mike. In elementary school there was a bully kid who would make fun of me. I had a bad bowl cut and was pretty small, so it wasn't surprising. Me and my friends usually just ignored him. Anyway, one day this kid from Brazil moved into the house next to mine. He was a year older. We used to play soccer together every day after school. I mentioned to him once that this kid would call me names, and usually while walking home from school would follow behind me taunting me. One day I'm leaving school and this kid is going slowly behind me on his bike shouting stuff. Just dumb kid stuff, you know. Brazil kid comes out of nowhere, knocks the kid off his bike, and just starts beating him. Bully is on the grass crying and bleeding. Brazil kid grabs the bike and gives it to me. You can keep this, and then walks away. I didn't know what to do. I just laid the bike next to the kid and walked home. He wasn't at school for like a week. Later in life I found that kid had a really crappy home situation with abusive parents. I was 10 at the time. Always felt bad for that. Quit bullying me though. I still occasionally see that Brazilian guy. Don't think he even remembers it. Cool on him for helping in his way. I just think it went too far. I was dating this girl and my friend saw her around town a few times and humiliated her in an effort to embarrass me. I told him to stop bothering her, but he did it again. That night I convinced him to try getting back together with his wildly insane and manipulative ex that he hadn't spoken to in years, thinking that he would just humiliate himself by trying. Well, they banged and got back together for a while and had a baby. Now they're terrible single parents. My friends and I used to put a lot of pranks on each other growing up, and about 10 years ago I was helping my buddy set up a new business. He was ordering business cards and the company he was going through was offering I think 500 or so free with a large order, so we decided to prank our other friend. We made business cards with his name, phone number, home address, and had his job title as professional creep with the slogan "If I'm creepin', you ain't sleepin'." We passed these cards out all over town. He was getting really harassing phone calls for a while and couldn't figure out why. After about 2 years he found one of the cards on a random fridge at a party and put 2 and 2 together. He was pissed and is still getting random calls 10 years later. I feel really bad about that one. My brother and cousins were walking home from school. Well, my brother and I were walking and my cousins were on bikes. They kept circling us and making fun of us because we didn't have bikes. One of my cousins then spits on me. Out of reflex, I blasted her with my trumpet case and she went flying, landed on the concrete, and broke her arm. I felt awful. It was the first and last time I ever hit a girl. My family believed every word of the story, knew this cousin was always a total female dog to me, and largely believed she had it coming. I still felt awful though. Oh, I have one for this. My grandpa was a bit old school and gave me prison yard advice for my first week of school. He said, if anyone picks on you, just deal with them right then, don't take it. First week of kindergarten, a grade 1 kid was pushing me around, not letting me go back to class. I pushed him down against a fence and kicked him in the face 3 or 4 times, splitting his nose. Almost got kicked out of school until they found out my grandpa had told me to do it. Thing is, no one messed with me after, and that guy was nice to me all the way through to graduation. A kid on my track team would always come by and take a drink of whatever I had with me. I was sick of it and brought a root beer with me which had been spiked with 3x the recommended dose of root beer flavored X-Lax. Sure enough, he came by and I said, you know what, Tony, why don't you just take the whole thing? Well, we were having a home meet that day and he was our best pole vaulter and part of the relay team. I thought maybe he'd feel a little off and underperform. In the midst of our warm-ups, he went missing and was absent the entire meet. My sister used to kick my butt on the regular. She had mad anger problems and would go berserk over the littlest things. One time I turned the light on while she was trying to sleep. She beat me up and I ended up going to prom with bruises all over me. All through the years, I never hit her back. I was a super sensitive kid, and if I ever hit back, I ended up crying to my mom about how I loved my sister and hated to hurt her. After I graduated, she had calmed down a bit, but she still had issues. Coming back from a small party one night, and she is back on her old bullcrap, just getting mad over something stupid and going totally crazy over it. We get home and get out of the car and say I'm driving home. She keeps saying I'm too drunk, even though I'd only had 3 mini beers. She grabs the back of my shirt, and I'm so pissed off at her, I turn around really fast with my fist out to hit her arm or something. She immediately lets out a blood-piercing scream and drops to the ground. Blood is spurting everywhere. She leaves a trail as she runs inside and wakes up our mom and dad. Turns out, I broke her nose pretty flipping bad, but my mom and dad kept saying it couldn't be that bad because I had done it, and that she must have really been flipping with me for me to have done something like that after all these years of her beating on me. I felt so awful. I cried and tried to say sorry, but she ended up going to the hospital. I don't feel so bad now because she purposely never paid the bill, thinking she could bully me into paying it, and she never lets it go. She always says I'm the reason her credit and stuff is bad, and that she still has collections agencies calling her over the air bill. I ain't paying that crap. Consider it payment for the years of abuse. Had a roommate who basically let his new GF move into our house in college. She helped herself to everything in the house but never contributed. Finally she parked in my parking spot and that was my breaking point. I let all the air out of all of her tires, thinking she'd just air them back up and it would be an inconvenience. Instead she ended up buying all new tires. Whoops. Never came clean about it. Way back in elementary school, a friend threw a piece of chalk that hit me square in the forehead. It was the most humiliating moment for younger me, as everyone who saw that started laughing their asses off. Kids are buttholes. I plotted and planned my revenge to get back in the exact same fashion over the next couple of days. One fine day, weapon in hand, I find him perfectly placed a chalk throw away from me. I yell out his name and quickly launch the projectile as he spins around. For some reason he had his mouth open as he looked at me, and the piece of chalk flew directly into his throat. His eyes widen, and he starts choking. I stood frozen in shock as he fell on his knees coughing. Luckily somebody grabbed him from behind and thumped his back, so he swallowed the piece. An adult walks in. Cannot remember who it was at the time, but she looks at me and asks what happened. At this point I'm shaking, realizing that I narrowly killed my friend. I say it was a mint. My friend, also shaken at this point, laughs it off, saying it went straight into his throat and he didn't taste it. The adult shakes her head and says next time just hand it like a normal person and walks away. Years later when we were moving away to another country I remind him about the incident and come clean about the whole thing. He snaps and yells I knew it. When I was about 7 or 8 there was this girl at my school that was absolutely horrible. We'll call her Cindy. Cindy would run up to you and pull your hair out, steal the toy you were playing with, eat your snack at snack time, etc. In other words, she was a real female dog. One day as we were finishing up recess in the playground, she came up to me, pulled my hair, and took some with it. That was the last straw. As the teacher was gathering everyone inside and wasn't looking our way, I grabbed Cindy by her pigtail and dragged her over to the playground. Now this playground was built weird with a sort of enclosed area in the middle of 3 bridges that formed a triangle that you couldn't get out of. Sometimes us bigger kids would jump in there during hide and seek and climb out later. But Cindy couldn't because she was shorter. So I picked her up and threw her down in there and left to go back inside. It wasn't until about an hour later when the teacher realized that Cindy wasn't in class. I didn't say where she was and it took them another half hour to find her. I got in trouble and had to spend the next week in the principal's office and lost my Gamma Boy for a month, but Cindy never messed with me again. When I was a kid I was at a local river, a great swimming spot lots of people came to. My friend pushes me in the river and naturally I came up spluttering and a little red in the face, but it was all in good fun. For the rest of the day I planned to get her back, waiting for my opportunity to push her in until she was at the edge of the river drying off. I pushed her, but her flailing and the slippery nature of the rocks she was on made her slip on the spot, and instead of just splashing into the water, she landed on her back hitting the rocks hard and then fell into the water. She was winded, but thankfully otherwise unharmed. Our parents were furious at me, and I just spent the few seconds it took to get her out felt like a lot longer to me, just hoping I hadn't broken her back or something. 2/10 revenge. Would not do again. Like and subscribe for more videos.